Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and tonight we are studying Parashat Tisa and the holy words of Shimshon Pincus. And as an introduction to what Rav Pincus wants to share with us this evening, we have to know that in this week's Torah portion, the Torah warns Bnei Israel to observe the Shabbat. An obvious question is why are we mentioning Shabbat here? We had it not long ago by the Ten Commandments. So, the Jewish people knew this, but there was a specific reason why it was repeated. And that was because even though the Jewish people were supposed to be very excited and zealous about the construction of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and as important as it is to construct and prepare a place for Hashem to reside, his presence, his Shekhinah, Hashem is no hypocrite. And the construction of the Mishkan does not override the observance of Shabbat. No melacha, no prohibited action should be done on Shabbat, even for the sake of building the Mishkan. That's why it's reminded to us here again, which is a beautiful concept. With this, Rav Pincus shares with us the pasuk, Exodus 31:17. It says, Beni uven bnei Israel, oti leolam, between me and the Jewish and the children of Israel, it will forever be a sign, a symbol. Ki sheshet yamim asa Hashem et hashamayim v'haaretz. Hashem created the world in 6 days. Uvayom hashisha atay nafash. And on the seventh day he ceased and rested. Famous verse, we say it in Kiddush every Saturday morning. So Rav Pincus tells us that the Talmud teaches us that on Shabbat, we're not supposed to wear tefillin. We're not allowed to wear tefillin. Why is that? Because tefillin is a symbol, an ot, just as Shabbat is an ot. And we never need more than two ots, two symbols, two witnesses. One witness that we always have is the Brit Milah, and the second is every day during the week, tefillin. And on Shabbat itself is a symbol. So we don't need more than two, and no tefillin are to be worn on Shabbat. That's what the Talmud tells us. Rav Pincus tells us that it seems that the Talmud is saying that Shabbat itself is a symbol, just like tefillin is a symbol. And if that's so, it would make sense to say that whatever we can understand by the essence of tefillin can also be applied to the holiness of Shabbat. And that's exactly what he does now. It's a beautiful concept. He says, if we look at the main part, the main intention of wearing tefillin is a concept of binding and connecting. We bind and connect our emunah, the belief we have in Hashem, to our minds and hearts. Our tefillin shel rosh, our tefillin that we put on our head, is impressing the concepts that are written in the tefillin, specifically the Shema Yisrael, that Hashem is the one and only God, on our minds. And the tefillin shel yad, the tefillin that's on our arm, we bind it right close to our heart, so that we impress that concept of emunah also on our heart, our minds and our heart, our intellect and our temptation. In the Patach Eliyahu, which can be found at the beginning of the Sidur, it's a piece of Zohar Kabbalistic teaching. Even though it's very, very deep mystical concepts, Rav Pincus tells us, which tells us about the attributes of God in comparison to a human being, to a human body, that we are Tzelem Elokim, we're created in Hashem's image, fashioned in Hashem's image. Even though these concepts are very, very, very mystical and very lofty, we still can explain, based on the simple understanding of the words, simple translation of the words, an amazing fact about tefillin. So look at this. What does the Patach Eliyahu do? It matches up each one of Hashem's attributes to another body part of the human being. For example, chesed, which we know is one of the attributes of God, loving kindness, is the right hand. Gevurah, which is more restriction, constriction, discipline, that's the left hand. And it goes and continues, each and every one. The right arm, the right leg, the left leg, center of the body, the head. But look at this. When it comes to the trait of keter, keter means the crown, the kingship. The Patach Eliyahu doesn't just say the head. It says, I'm going to quote it to you, Ihu karkafta de tefileh. Translated means a head with tefillin on. A head with tefillin on. It doesn't say just a head. The head with tefillin on. Meaning that when one has their tefillin on their head, that is when the human body is considered complete. Just as one's arms and one's legs are part of the makeup of one's body, tefillin are also part of the basic makeup of one's body. And this phenomenon, explains Rav Pincus, is only found in regards to tefillin. For example, gevurah, which is strength, is referred to as the middle of the body in the Patach Eliyahu. It doesn't say gufa im tzitzit, the body when it's wearing tzitzit, or gufa de la achal nevelot, the body that doesn't eat non-kosher food. It just says the body, because the body itself is part of the most simple makeup of the human being. And any mitzvah done with the body is only there to raise or lower its level. But tefillin are not like that. Tefillin are actually part of the body. And without tefillin, something's missing and incomplete in the human body. Rav Pincus says this makes sense because tefillin, in the tefillin, as we said, we have written the Shema, which is our most precious and core belief in Hashem, that He is the one and only God. And a person without emunah is literally incomplete, not a person, not a Jew. The tefillin connect us to our emunah and make our bodies complete, Rav Pincus says. So now he ties this into Shabbat. How amazing can we connect this concept to another ot, another symbol, the symbol of Shabbat? That the same way one who doesn't observe Shabbat is considered a goy, you're not considered Jewish unless you keep Shabbat. Because that's what Hashem wants from us. It's one of the very, very few mitzvot. So a man who doesn't wear tefillin is not considered a complete person because his Jewish essence is missing. He's missing a limb. He's missing a spiritual piece of his body that makes him incomplete, not a human, not a person. Shabbat's the same thing. A person who does not keep Shabbat, which is another ot, another symbol, just like tefillin's a symbol, is not a Jew. Now, of course, physically, DNA-wise, of course, they have a neshama, a soul, but they're not acting like a Jew. That's one comparison between Shabbat and tefillin, Rav Pincus says. Next, he says, the whole point of tefillin, as we mentioned, is emunah. It's belief. The same as with Shabbat. We're commanded to cease from all creation on Saturday, on Shabbat, as a testimony of our belief that Hashem also ceased after 6 days of creating. So we cease from creating ourselves in our world, in our life. That concept of emunah is apparent by both of these symbols. One last connection he brings is that when a person wears tefillin, it has to be strapped down with no interruption, nothing in the way. You can't put tefillin over the shirt or over your jacket. It's got to be directly on your skin. Also, you can't have what's called hesech hadat. You can't have a missing or a lack of intent and concentration when you have your tefillin on. You can't think of something else. It's only the tefillin or the prayer or Torah study. You can't start thinking about business and having random conversations. So Shabbat, similarly. Shabbat is a day that we have completely no thoughts, speech, or action of anything besides for resting, connecting to Hashem, enjoying the Shabbat, observing the Shabbat. So that's another comparison. Now, Rav Pincus goes on to make another important observation. And this observation is that by every day of the week, the Torah, by creation, tells us, Vahi erev, vahi boker, and it was night, and it was day, and it was the first day, the second day, the third day, fourth, fifth, sixth day. There's only one exception, Shabbat. By Shabbat, we don't have that vernacular, Vahi erev, vahi boker, that it was night, and it was day, and it was a day, and it was this first day, the second day. We don't have that by Shabbat. Why? Explains our sages that erev, night, is what happens on a regular day. On Shabbat, however, Shabbat is a day that's a complete 24-hour day long. There's no night. Yeah, of course, the sun sets and it's black outside, but it's day. And the truth is multiple times in the Torah, and he quotes it, that Shabbat is only referred to as day. It says, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat, remember the day of Shabbat. What about the night of Shabbat? There's no night on Shabbat. In another verse, Kol ha'oseh bo melacha, Kol ha'oseh melacha b'yom HaShabbat, whoever does melacha on the day of Shabbat. What about at the night of Shabbat? There's no night of Shabbat, Pincus says. Shabbat is one long illuminated day. And to understand what it means that Shabbat is a day, we have to understand the following Gemara. The Gemara in Masechet Baba Metzia, page 83b, tells us that the world that we live in is like night. What does that mean, that it's night? It means it's dark. There's many things that are hidden, not understood. The truth and purity in this world is concealed. Pincus gives a mashal. He gives an anecdote. Listen to this. It's amazing. He says, there was a person who saw someone else speaking on a cell phone. And he asks, how is it possible that you're able to speak and hear through this device, and the person on the other side of the line, the other end, also is able to hear and speak to you? So the guy says, there's a thing called sound waves. And these sound waves are communicated through cellular poles, and that's the way it works. So the guy starts searching to find these sound waves, and he can't see them. He wants to know what they look like. So he brings all types of gizmos and gadgets, and he can't figure it out. He takes a microscope that's able to see thin, very small things. Can't see the sound waves in between. Gets a telescope that can see things from very far away. Still can't see the sound waves. Takes a flashlight and looks under and in the dark. He can't see the sound waves. He gets a net with very small holes, and he's trying to catch and see if he can catch the sound waves. Nothing, useless. Goes back to the guy and says, I don't know what you're talking about, but there's no such thing as sound waves. I tried everything in the book. The gentleman told him, come on. There's only one way to detect a sound wave, and that's using a decibel meter. That's the type of utensil that is used to be able to calculate sound waves, or so to say, see sound waves. What's the lesson? Rav Pincus says, the same idea applies to when a person is seeking Hashem, seeking any belief in Hashem. A professor that walks into a room and lowers his glasses and says, today we're going to look for God. Looking through a microscope and a telescope and flashlights and a net, not going to find anything. Then what do? They conclude that God doesn't exist because they can't understand. You know what you tell such a fellow? Say, don't look too far. Hashem is all over. He's in every part of the world and every part of you. You're just not using the right tool to find him. So what's the right tool, Rav Pincus says? A healthy, intellectual, honest mind. Honesty. Sanctification of one's traits. That's the way to see Hashem. Then you see Hashem's all over. In this world, it's hard to find Hashem. It is, truly is. There's so many fancy machines and apparatuses, and none of these things or this technology can help us find Hashem. If anything, it just conceals Hashem even more. But that's what Hashem's purpose is. He wants to be concealed so that we can go out and look for him. But Shabbat, everything changes. See, Shabbat comes along and it's a day. It's an all-day event. It's light all day, night long for 25 hours. What does it mean that it's light? It's a clear day. There's clarity to be attained at that point. When you spend the day at home, you spend the day at shul with your family, Torah, prayer, we're not distracted. We're able to stop and simply appreciate the normal, simple things in life. That's where you see Hashem. You see Hashem in your children. You see Hashem in the nature. Today, who stops and admires nature? Who stops and spends quality time with their spouse and their children? Shabbat. That's what Shabbat's for. Hashem says Shabbat is an all-day event. It's day the entire time. It's a day of clarity. It's a day where we can connect to Hashem and strengthen in our emunah with him. That's why there's no mention of night by Shabbat. It's always day. Yom, 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 yom. Because it's the clear moment. So to summarize the two lessons we learned from Pincus this evening is that Shabbat and Tefilin are both symbols. And they're similar in the fact that they're both imperative in the basic makeup of a Jew. They also both testify to our emunah, and they also are also supposed to be observed with no break, with no interruption. And the second lesson that Pincus is teaching us is that Shabbat is an illuminated day of clarity. On this day, we're able to recognize and connect to Hashem more than any other day. No distractions. Very special, one of a kind. It's the most powerful way to find Hashem when we're not distracted. So maybe Bezrat Hashem bless us that these lessons should strengthen our observance of Shabbat, our learning of Shabbat, our connection to Hashem, our study of emunah, and be steadfast in our conviction that we need to seize on Shabbat because Hashem seized in his creation. Like stopped at the end of 7 days, at the end of 6 days of creation. We too, in our little worlds, in our little lives, are also to stop once a week and recharge, rejuvenate, and find our connection to Hashem in that way.